Up next, we have Kyle. Kyle wrote in and said, with a very young daughter, is it better to have her in daycare part-time, but living in a better home and neighborhood, or should I quit my job and move to a smaller home in a neighborhood of less quality, but be a stay-at-home dad? That's from Kyle.
Oh, Kyle.
How you doing,
Kyle.
Steph?
I'm well, thanks. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Do you really mean that question? Do you really not know how I'm going to answer that question?
No, I absolutely know how you're going to answer that question.
What would Stefan say? Just get the bracelet.
Well, it was actually a question that Mike asked on a previous show that really got me thinking about it when he asked a question about what is your top priority? And obviously my top priority in the morning when I wake up is my daughter.
Go on. Sorry, that sounds like you're not finished your sentence.
That's it. At that point, there's everything else is second to that. And my only thing I'm really wrestling in is that we live in a very nice neighborhood. You know, as we speak, it's dark out. I'm walking the dog. All the neighbors are very good. And if I were to leave my job and only rely on my wife's income, we would move to a much less safe neighborhood, a neighborhood which has an element to it that I'm not real happy about. And it just seems to me like, is it
I'm
better?
sorry, I don't, I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't quite understand. Are you saying that every place that's cheap to live is crime ridden?
No, I'm not saying that. But...
Have you ever heard of this place they call the country? Have you ever heard of... You can see for miles. The sky is an ungodly blue bowl of lovely cloudiness. There are low trees around. There may be dirt roads, and those dirt roads may not be plowed that well in the wintertime. But lo, there is a place out there where you can smell something other than the farts of cars and the rotting of food that is left out back of the Chinese stores. I'm just telling you, there's a wonderful place out there. Very low crime, very cheap, clean air, not so many people. Some call it paradise.
Well, I mean, the Cessna's in the shop right now, so my wife's commute from the country might be a little bit longer, maybe about 2-3 hours back and forth from where we live to where her job is. She works in the city, in a very large metropolitan city. So, I mean, part of it's that. We're kind of constricted by her job, at least.
So she can't get anything that involves telecommuting. She can't get anything which involves working remotely, and she can't shift to any other place.
She's been looking for a new job for about 2 years, and she's in the accounts payable. She's an accounts payable supervisor, which, if you know anything about accounts payable, being the supervisor is the top of the food chain. She would love to get into finance, but everybody wants experience. She's gone on probably 25, 30 interviews. Everybody loves her. They just do not like her lack of experience. So right now, where she is kind of where she is.
Is she right downtown?
Yes, downtown,
right.
Heart of the city.
Okay, yeah, you don't have to say where, but okay, so it's not like you're in some suburb where you could range out to the country and still have not too brutal a commute.
Well, no, we live in the suburbs, but she already has a pretty hefty commute into the city.
Right. And are you saying that there's no place where you can move that's cheaper? And it's not permanent, right? I mean, it's just while your kids are young, right? Listen, parenting is all about the first 5 years.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. The rest of it is just tidying up. You know, you ever bake a cake? From scratch. I mean, not one of these like add powders and pretend you're on a spaceship or something. Like, you ever bake a cake from scratch?
Me personally, no, I'm not really the cake baking type.
Okay. Well, if you bake a cake from scratch, it's all in the beginning. If you put too much of the wrong stuff, too much vanilla, you put too much stuff wrong in the beginning, it doesn't matter what you do after that. It's going to take, well, let's just leave it in the oven a little longer. Well, let's just put some more icing on. Forget it. Doesn't matter. It's all in the beginning of things that matter. So we're just talking the first 5 years. Right. First 5 years. Well, you're not exiled forever. I want to go to Siberia for the rest of your life. A couple of years where you can be home with your daughter, to create that bond, to create the stability in that personality, to allow her to develop in the shadow of parental bonds and love and affection and connection and play. And then she becomes bulletproof. She becomes like a transformer. She's invulnerable. She's super child because she's got that dedicated bond. And now after that, you can enlist her in the army. I'm just kidding, right? But after that, you can move back, you can things like that. It's the first 5 years that matter. After that, if you've baked the cake right, it doesn't matter how you shape the icing, right? You can add a little more, a little less. It's still going to taste pretty much the same.
Well,
So you are baking the cake. You've got the ingredients. They're in the bowl. You're mixing them up, and you've got to get this part right. Because if you get this part wrong, it doesn't matter what you add later. And if you get this part right, it doesn't matter what you add later. So this is the baking the child's brain phase. Get the recipe right. Get the involvement right. So no one's talking forever, right? I mean, did you go to college?
I did.
Okay. Did you live like a hobo when you were in college? I know I did.
I did. I did.
I had a roommate in my room. I slept in a room with a guy. We were in the same room. That's how tight things were for me in college. I remember. Oh man, one winter in Montreal, it's cold as a witch's tit. Let me tell you, cold as a feminist heart. And one winter was so broke that I barely turned on the heat. Now, Montreal gets to like minus 20, minus 30. It's horrible. You wake up in the morning and you can see your breath. You got to bundle yourself up in like 19 sweaters. And it turns out it was a complete waste of time because I got the first bill and I was like, well, this is really high. I can't afford this. And it turns out that they actually calculate your bill not based on your current usage, but based on some weird ass guesstimate from the previous person's usage. So it was completely useless for me to be that cold for that long. But anyway. Or, what's great about being a student when you're broke is you have no place to get, you have no easy way to get groceries. I remember biking with groceries on a bike in the snow during a snowstorm in traffic with, the plastic bags hanging from my bike and don't turn too quickly or they're going to go into the spokes. But you can get coupons from the student newspaper where it's 2-for-1 subs. Thank you, sub place of the gods, for my 2-for-1 subs, because you can take them home, you can freeze them, you can thaw them, you can eat them, and it's good eating. You can really pile that stuff high. You can also get a hot dog with a side salad if you just put enough stuff on top. Anyway, enough stories of my poverty-stricken student years. But you downgraded for your education, right? I assume that you came from a more comfortable place living with your parents, and then as a student you lived like a hobo, and then you've upgraded since, right? So you already know what it's like to downgrade. It's not that bad.
No, it's not that bad, but I downgraded. I went through all of that so that I could provide this very sort of privileged life for my family, for my daughter. And so now it's kind of seems like, well, the past 10 years, well, the hell with them, all bullshit. Now, stay at home and bake cakes.
Well, what do you think your daughter wants? A bigger house or a present father?
Well, and so let me get into some of the specifics of this too, because she's only in daycare 2 days a week. I work 4 10-hour shifts, so 3 days a week it's me and her. One of my in-law or my mother watch her 1 day a week, and then my wife has her pretty much exclusively the last day. So she is only in daycare 2 out of 7 days, and it's a private daycare.
How old is she?
She's 7 months old.
7 months old.
I know.
So you say only 2 days a week. How do you think, Kyle, a 7-month-old experiences a day in daycare?
Oh, it's
from her time sense. Forget about yours. Well, it's only a certain portion of it. What is it like for her in her sense of time and connection?
It's got to be absolutely traumatic, brutal.
She thinks you're never coming back, I think.
Yeah, you're telling me
I am left in a snowbank by my parents. I sure hope there aren't any bears around.
Well, and I see these older kids who get dropped off at daycare, and when their parents are taking them in, I mean, you'd think they were sending them off to, fight the Germans or something. The kids are screaming and yelling and clawing, and it's like, no, just don't leave me. And
But think of evolution. Think of evolution. Why would, in evolutionary terms, when everyone's around and they're all hunter-gatherers and they can sit around on their asses and pick their noses because they've just hunted or whatever, one parent's always around. Why would parents be in a tribal situation? Why would parents be handing off children to a stranger? What would cause that in a hunter-gatherer society?
some sort of illness, war, sickness.
Yeah. Let's just say a complete freaking disaster. Some complete freaking disaster. Why would you be handing off your children? Because daddy's drowning on the Titanic. I'm going to hand you to strangers. Because we're both ill and we're going to go off into the forest to die. Because we're going off to war. Because things are on fire. Because there's plague, pestilence, famine, destruction, rains from the sky, frozen frogs landing on our forehead. Disaster. The Old Testament loop we're stuck in. You know, God hates us and wants to freeze the Jews, and he thinks we're the Egyptians, and things are just going from bad to worse. So, of course, when parents hand off children, children are going to freak out because nothing short of a disaster from an evolutionary standpoint would trigger such behavior.
And you're not telling me anything I don't know.
How is your daughter when she's dropped off?
Well, she's very young. I mean, she's happy to be awake, I suppose. I mean, she doesn't cry or anything, really.
And how is she when you come to pick her up?
Oh, she's ecstatic. Face lights up, and she just, she thinks she just won the lottery.
Right.
That's the thing. I know what you're saying is 100% true. The petty humanistic side of me just wants to not go through all the sort of sacrifice and pain and everything I'm going to have to go through. But I know.
How much do you pay? But sorry, before we get to your existential angst, how much are you paying for daycare?
$75 every day, 2 days a week, about $150 a week.
So $600 a month or so, right?
Yeah.
All right. And you're in a 20, 40%, 30% tax bracket?
Yeah. 40%.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I'm in the highest.
Okay. So you have to make a little over $1,000 before taxes to pay for the daycare, right?
Yes.
And how much bank are you pulling a month? I mean, what are you making in a month if you're working 2 days a week?
If I'm working 2 days a week, well, I mean, I'm very well paid hourly. Depends on, overtime. Maybe 2 days a week, maybe about $2,000 ish.
So half of your money before taxes is going to the daycare, right?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Did you say 2,000 a week?
That's about. If I'm working 2 days, full 2-hour days,
Wait, what do you mean full 2-hour days? What do you mean?
Well, no. So if I'm working two full days at an hourly rate, probably those 2 days, about $2,000. $1,000
a week or a month?
2 days.
So you make $1,000 a day,
roughly.
And that's how many hours?
It can be 18.
18 hours. Okay. What do you do, out of curiosity?
I work in a very high risk line, like high tension lines, hazard pay, $50, $60 hour kind of stuff I pay.
All right. So when you're gone, you're really gone, right? So if you're making $50, you're making $50 an hour.
There's a storm coming where I live today. I'm on call. If I go in, since I'm technically not supposed to be working tomorrow, it'll be time and a half. I could be there for 18, 20 hours. It would be a tremendous amount of money.
Right. Okay, I got it. So I understand. So because you're unionized and all that, right? And is it government work?
No, it's a private company, but it's subsidized by the government heavily.
Okay, got it. All right. Okay, so you are making significant amount more. There is, of course, the high risk danger element. People, I assume, don't get injured too much, right?
3 people died last.
Out of how many people?
145.
Okay.
That's just my.
So
that's just my shop. That's just my.
Yeah. I got it. So there's that aspect too, that you might end up someplace new. It just might not be a place in a cheaper neighborhood. It might be a pine box in the earth, right?
Correct.
Or the hospital.
Or yes.
Right.
The hospital.
Now, they do have these things in the country too, right?
They
This
do.
requirement.
Yeah.
In fact, in the country, as far as I understand it, in the country, power outages can be a fairly significant problem because people are so stretched out, right?
Yes.
So you could get a job in the country, right?
Yes.
Now, if you get a job in the country and you're able to make $2,000 a week and you don't need to pay for daycare because your wife's home and you're still only working 2 days a week, what is wrong with that?
Well, that's I would still be working 4 days a week. I mean, you have certain hours you have to meet. My
What?
example.
No, hang on. You said you're working 2 days a week now.
No. That's what I earn in 2 days. I work 4 10-hour days plus overtime. So I work 40 hours a week. They're just trimmed into 4 days instead of 5 days. Plus, there's dramatic amount of overtime.
Oh, sorry. So you're okay.
Basically,
Your kid's in daycare 2 days a week. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're on a pole and the job's not fixed and it's, quitting time, you don't get to come off
You
the
stay
pole.
till you're done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you stay till you're done. Okay. So, but if you're pulling home $8,000 a month, that is like, okay, let's say you $10,000 a month. Okay, so you're booking 120 large a year.
Before taxes.
That is
yes.
more than enough. I mean, that is way more than you need to comfortably live in the country, and your wife wouldn't have to have a commute at all.
This is true. But then, I mean, you don't just walk into, hey guys, I'd like a job in your shop. Why don't you, make a spot for me? And these are very, I mean, even though it's very dangerous, they're very highly desirable job.
Right. But you said your wife couldn't get the job because she lacked experience. You have a lot of experience, and there are fewer people living in the country, so don't throw up these artificial barriers when you haven't even looked into it. Did I just give you a new possibility, a new idea?
No, you did. I think.
Okay, so the first thing you did was tell me why it was impossible.
Well,
you're wrong.
You're right.
And it's annoying.
Right. Sorry, I apologize.
Okay, I mean, just be open. It's a possibility.
Yes.
It's a possibility.
Correct.
You say, hey, I'm super skilled, super experienced, willing to work hard, and I'm available, and see what happens, right?
Right. Well, and I think part of my issue also has been we've been approaching the situation from I would be the one to stay home because in 5, 10, 6 years, I could pick up right where I left off doing the same job. Whereas my wife, if she left her job, it would be much harder for her to get back into that sort of position. So you're right.
But why? She could stay. Hang on. How do you know?
I don't know. She knows her work. I'm not.
Well, she could stay educated. She might be able to get something part-time that's remote. I mean, I'm sure that there are people in the country who also need their books done or accounts payable or whatever. So again, you guys just have this conclusion that things can't be done. And I can't understand that. Okay, who makes more money, you or your wife?
I make more money.
Right. So if you were, and your jobs are more portable, and so on, and your job skills are more portable, so it would make sense for you to work and for her to stay home.
Correct. But then again, you also have the, hey, Kyle went to work and didn't come home from work because he got electrocuted and died aspect of it.
But
too,
you're doing that. But you're doing that anyway.
You're right.
I don't understand. If that's an issue, then why do you have this job in the first place?
Because of the money. I mean.
Okay, so let's. I don't agree with the risk of the job, but everyone has their own particular preferences. But the work needs to be done, and so on, right?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Do you think that your wife would not want to stay home?
I know that she would. Yeah, I absolutely know that she would.
So your wife wants to stay home. You can easily afford it. It makes much more sense financially.
But there are what ifs there. I mean, it's not like, okay, I mean, it's not that simple. It would take a dramatic amount. I'd have to find a position in an open shop someplace. And I'm not trying to throw up artificial barriers. I'm just being logistics of the situation.
No. You're trying to give me answers to questions you haven't even thought of until tonight. So everything you say is crap. Sorry. Right? You need to explore it. You need to look into it.
Yes.
Right? You don't know. There could be a job that's perfect for you. You don't know. Now, of course, there is something, I don't know where your wife's politics are or her gender things are, but there is something A woman who quits her job has to really trust you. Plus, for God's sakes, get some life insurance. But anyway, a woman who quits her job and depends on you, she really has to trust you.
Yes.
Right. So if your marriage is rock solid and stable, then you'll be fine with that. But here's the thing, Kyle.
Mm.
You have a child.
I do.
So it's not up to you anymore. That's the beautiful thing about being a parent is your priorities just get set for you. It's not up to you anymore. I mean, I'm telling you this, Kyle, your daughter is going to grow up and she's going to listen. She might even listen to this particular show, right? And she's going to hear me trying to convince you or your wife to stay home and be a full-time parent, which is basically to be a parent, right?
Yes.
You have become a parent, which means that your priorities are set for you. You have given up your free will. You're kind of trying to it's like you're trying to live like half a parent or a parent with no particular interference in my lifestyle. Forget it. Doesn't work. It doesn't. That's not the job of a parent. The job of the parent is to wake up in the morning and say, what is the best thing for my child? And that doesn't mean you don't become an individual, and it doesn't mean you surrender to everything, and it doesn't mean you give that child everything that they, of course not, right? Because that's not the best thing for the child, right? And the best thing for your child is to have a stay-at-home parent. Don't shoot the messenger. That just appears to be the basic facts of the situation. The best thing for your child, the best thing for your daughter is for you or your wife to stay home with her for the first couple of years. And you're like, well, but how can I maintain where we live and how can we maintain our careers and how we can... Simple answer, you can't. You can't. Not if you want what's best for your daughter, in my humble opinion. You can't. You're trying to have your cake and eat it too, right? You're trying to say, well, I really like the stability and intimacy of getting married, but how can I do that and still date as many women as I want? It's like, this is an either-or situation. This is binary. This is binary. You have the kind of problems and what you consider limitations, Kyle, that approximately 99.9999999 infinity% of people throughout history and in many ways across the world would love to have. These are first world problems. Well, I may end up having to live on only $120,000 a year in the country with a beautiful wife and daughter. And good Lord, you understand how many people would kill to have these kinds of problems. You chose to have a child. You chose to be a parent. So be a parent.
We've paid a lot of money to have a child.
Organize your life around what's best for your daughter. And of course, if you have the setup, right, where you can work and your wife can stay home, then you can have more children. You can have 5 children. You can have 10 children if you want. Certainly in the country, $120,000 is like $12 billion a year. You basically can buy Trump Tower in the country for $120,000 a year. I think that's US too. So that's about 13 billion Canadian. Anyway, so yeah, you just have to make those decisions, explore, figure out what you can do, talk about things with your wife. But I'm telling you, man, this time when they're young, I know you're home. Someone's home with her 5 days a week. It's great. It's great. I don't want to minimize or pretend you didn't say that, but you have a once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, if you have other kids, which I hope you will, I mean, give some siblings over, then you will have that opportunity again. But the opportunity to be home all the time with your child is just, it's so amazing and it's so wonderful. And it is such a gift that I can't imagine anything. Once you get there and once you understand what that's like, and once you understand what it's like to not have the stress of 2 people working, of 2 people commuting, of 2 people having to do all this stuff, you'll look back and you'll say, man, the only thing I can't figure out is why we didn't do this sooner. So I hope that makes sense. Thanks very much for your call. And let's move on to the next caller.